something has to be fixed. So all of these situations vary. What you need to know as real estate agents to help your buyers and sellers and maintain your relationships is not to get involved in these situations. How do we prevent these things from happening? How do we protect the transaction and the seller? So we'll start out first. If you represent the buyer, and I'm sure you guys work with many title companies as well as Stuart, you're going to write that you close open permits and code violations at own expense prior to closing. So that's a legal term that is out of the as-is that you're going to write if you represent the buyer. If you represent the seller, typically in Miami-Dade and Broward, the buyer's title company is pulling the lien search. And that's where we come into the problems. Sometimes the buyer's title company is pulling the lien search outside inspection period. After Ernesto comes to the property, the seller gets negotiated with, and then we find out after the inspection period when the money's hard and the mortgage rate's locked and everyone's ready to close and you're ready to get your commission that we have a problem. And we don't want that to happen. That's why it's important that you use a great title company like Stuart, who uses a reliable lien search. That's going to cover all the information. All a municipal lien search is, the municipal lien search is going to make sure for the title company that you're getting clean title. That's a title search. But the municipal lien search makes sure open permits, water, taxes, code violations, things like that. Anything municipal is city. Anything having to do with the city. And you can close with open permits and code violations, but it's important that your client understands what they are, that if they need to, they get a credit or something like that. A lot of these owners, they've sold their property many times or bought their property with problems that they didn't know about or that their title company did not explain to them. And who are they upset at the end? They're upset at the realtor that sold them the house, who picked the title company and picked the home inspector. So that's why working with vendors is very important. So we're going to go over what the importance of permitting and code violation resolution is. So I'm typically brought in when you find out about something. Hopefully you find out about something when you take the listing. You find out about any problems. Now, how do you find out about those problems? You can go to Erica Stewart and she could pull a pencil search with Reliable and they could find out about if there's any problems on the surface, a start. One thing you might know is your seller. Your sellers might know they have an open permit. So I did remodeling with a contractor, I signed permit with Weston, I never saw any inspectors. Whoop! You might have an open permit on your hands, okay? So if you're taking the listing, if you're representing the buyer, you obviously want to know about it as early as possible. And the only way you can know about that is by choosing a title company like Stewart and Reliable who's going to pull that lien search quickly. Next slide. Oh, wait. Oh, there we go.
Right there.
Good. So I'm going to go right here. What is a building permit? A building permit, technically the city of Weston and all the municipalities in Broward says everything needs a building permit in a house. In a house, kitchen remodel. Some people say, I'm just changing the counters. Well, you touch the backsplash, that's electric. You need to go to the panel, update the panel. So everything in a house that is plumbing, electrical, anything on the outside, driveway, roof, windows, everything requires a permit. If you're in Bonadventure or you're in a condominium, everything also requires a permit, and the condos also require that you get a permit so the contractor could start working. The one difference in a house than in a condo, in a house, if you're the owner and the property's homesteaded, you could pull your own permit, but you still need to get a permit and have city inspections. So that's called an owner-builder permit. So,
It doesn't have a permit?
What's up?
If that's in a condo, is different?
If it's in a condo, you can't pull an owner-builder permit because it's an attached structure, meaning you're attached to Unit A and B and C, and they don't want you doing your own work, electrical and things like that. She had a question first. I'm sorry.
Does it have to be certain amount for the
Sometimes the cities have a $1,500, a job amount, or under 25% of a roof. But really, the building officials could do whatever they want. So they're going to require, they want to collect their fees, they want a licensed person to do the work, or under an owner builder if it's a house, single family, and they want the city to come and inspect for compliance.
My question is, owner builder applies for everything, windows, roof, or for certain?
Everything in a single family, but the property has to be homesteaded.
What about duplex?
A duplex, if you own the duplex, it depends on the city. Some building officials will allow it in multifamily, some will not. But technically, if it's a duplex, you don't have you could have the property homesteaded if you lived in one side of it. Yeah. That depends on the city. Every building official, wherever you're at, could do whatever they want to do. They could even say electrical work, no owner builder. Pool, no owner builder. So they could take complicated things that are health safety issues and say no owner builder.
Do you know anything about Hollywood?
I know a lot, yeah.
There can be owner permit in Hollywood?
I'm sure over there, if it's to correct a code violation, it can't be owner builder. If it's to do work and it's a multifamily, that'll vary on the scope of work, on the situation. But it's always important to ask the building official or ask the building department rather than get a code violation and per day fines and having to, because sometimes when the code officer comes on the property, they're going to see things and they're going to say you need a permit for this, 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 and that. But where I come in is I come in after the code officer before the building inspector comes in. So I correct some things on the surface before the building inspector comes in so we have an easier time passing inspection. The more sloppy the work is on the front, and you pull out some outlets and switches and you see cables and lamp cords. So we try and fix things as long as they're reasonable before the inspector. Did that answer?
Yeah.
Cool.
I just found out that at the city of Pembroke Pines, they allow you to do the owner builder, but only if you're not going to sell the property.
Correct.
A year.
Yes, that's another. Well, that also kind of overlaps with the homestead exemption. They don't want investors pulling owner builder, because an investor is going to sell a house. So they want that contractor there along with the city, and they want someone else to take responsibility for the work. They know that the investor has no intentions. That's why they usually require the property to be homesteaded, which takes time after closing, and the work has to be under like 70 grand. There's a couple different requirements. But they don't but they don't want, even Palm Beach County, any of these cities, if they find out the property's for sale or it has a code violation, you could kick owner builder out. Now, the owner builder just means the owner's taking responsibility for the work. But you still need to do the work, you still need to pay the fees, and you still need to get the inspections. So it's not really, it's saving you a little bit of money, but hopefully your uncle is a really damn good electrician and knows how to do the work right. You can supervise him, but if that person doesn't know how to do the work right, you're going to have a problem with inspections anyway. So if you have, when I work with sellers, they're in hardships all the time because they're hit up during the inspection period, they're hit up again during this open permit or code violation, and they don't have another $10,000, $5,000, $4,000 to remedy these problems, $1,500. And what I try to prevent in my business is them coming after your commission, because that's what they're going to do when they're pushed up against the wall, which you guys work very hard and market the property and represent the sellers and the buyers correctly. So I'm here to prevent those problems. David?
I think also when you're referring to the building permits, you were talking about the condoms. They need board approval.
Condos typically need board approval. What I see in condos, mainly high-rises in Hollywood and Hollandale, is that these contractors, like in Emerald Hills, and I was talking to Eric about this, they go, Hollywood Hills, they go up in the building, they get the shutter permit, they give the permit card to the condo to get started working, get their license and insurance, but never call for inspections. So then the property owner has to sell 5 years later down the line. They do a kitchen remodel without a permit, or they do whatever. We've been running in Pompano and Deerfield and Hollywood. A lot of things happened in 2009, 10, and 11. We all know about that. Some of the property managers were like this. They weren't allowing the city in the building. They weren't reporting work without a permit. They were basically pooping where they eat, I like to call it, to be correct. Because they're essentially allowing work to go on inside the building without a permit, so then when a pipe breaks, they have pending litigation, and they have a problem with their condo questionnaire and can't sell their condominium, or can't get financing, or the buyer needs to have over 25%. Because they don't have the reserves, because they have pending litigation. So all of these things are kind of wrapped up in one another. But again, I was in Racquet Club Villas the other day. One of the board members called the code officer, and the guy was doing kitchen, bathroom, flooring. The only other difference about a condo is flooring. You need soundproofing if you're above the first floor. Commercial buildings like the one we're standing in, they want a permit for everything. They want life safety, they want means of egress, they want exits. They want to know that kitchenette is plumbed right so the unit doesn't flood downstairs. So that the property owner generally wants to see these things. The problem is the tenant does whatever they want, whether it's residential or commercial. And the property owner always gets screwed over. They're the ones left holding the bag. So if you do property management, you should also make sure that keep an eye on the tenants. If it's a commercial tenant, you want to make sure they get their local business tax receipt every year. That's the thing hanging on the front wall in the lobby from the city of Weston. Because if you go to sell the place or refinance, you're going to have a problem. If you have a code violation, you're not going to be able to take money out of the property or anything like that. But I want to focus strictly on your relationships with your buyers and sellers, and how you can use Erica and I and David as a resource. But I can answer any question that you need. I could go talk about Airbnbs. We could do a class on that. A lot of the cities are cracking down on Airbnbs. You're using a condo or a house in an HOA or in Savannah or in Bonaventure, and you're using it as an Airbnb. It's a single family zoning district. The city doesn't allow that. So that's where we get into zoning, code violations, lien searches, which we discussed. We'll go more about what is a lien search. Vacant property registration. We see that a lot in Miami-Dade County, other municipalities down there. How many of you ever done business in Miami Gardens or North Miami Beach? All these cities, all these cities have reoccupancy inspections. Yeah. And that we focused on in the Doral office. A lot of the agents down there are facing that. When you represent a seller in Doral, in North Miami, or Miami Gardens, or Hialeah Gardens, or El Portal, or Biscayne Park, and I'll provide the list to you. Yeah. The city wants to come in. And the city wants to inspect the property and issue a certificate that everything's okay.
And guys, please, this is why I told Ernesto why it's so important to do this training. Because in the title industry, obviously, when we do closings, we're seeing so many problems with properties. And you guys sometimes don't know. Even if you're a listing agent, you don't know. That's why I brought Ben over. And I wanted to see more agents come in today because, I see the problems. It's happening all the time. The listing agents don't know. So if you have a buyer and the listing agent doesn't know, at least you know, you're aware of what's happening, especially in Hialeah, which Miami-Dade,
Northwest,
yeah. And
you need to, because if you don't have, you have to make a closing.
Correct. So that's one of the reasons why I'm like, and this is not over. Like, we're gonna do more things, and I really want to do a training for homeowners because they need to know. They're getting penalized with so much money, and I want Ben to help those homeowners, because we have to help them, because they don't know.
And those sellers, the homeowners, they're generally in a hardship. Like when they get hit with this,
Correct.
they don't have the proceeds. The transaction might not happen. We're going to do a class on why green loans. And there's predatory contractors out there saying, we'll do your windows, no money. We'll do your roof, no money. Well, they're using a program that pays for that and puts it on the tax bill. And the tax bill, that amount has to be paid at closing. So if one of these sellers doesn't understand this, before you could do your net sheet all you want with your commission and taxes and all the other things and the seller's proceeds at the end, but they might have to pay off a $26,000 loan. That property you're spending the time to market, that you have a relationship with the seller, their house might not be sellable. And these are things that really good title companies check out when you give them the file. Some of your other title companies, they wait for this to come in last minute and you get a call, hey, we can't close on your property. We found out we have a loan. Or we found out that there's so we need to find out about these ahead of time.
I have a question. What happens if the owner change the windows, do the roof without permit? But the city doesn't know because he never pulled out permit.
I have that case in Hollywood.
The title company is not going to find out because there's no lien.
Got it. I have, again, this is the best we have to work with, but I'm dealing with that problem on Roosevelt Street in Hollywood. A client, a seller, actually the agent was the buyer's brother. So he felt really, I mean, it's his family. And the guy bought the house for $320,000, a little house. The investor did the floor, the roof, the windows, the kitchen, the bathrooms. The city only sees what's on the outside, of course. They drive by, and so after the property changed ownership, he got a code violation after closing.
Yeah.
So this leaves him in a very horrible situation because the roof, you have 4 missed inspections with the shingles or the tile. It's a shingle roof in this area in Hollywood. So he's left after a couple remedies. He can go after the seller who sold him the property, depending on the damages, and that turns over into a legal situation, which none of us are attorneys in the room. And sometimes, if the seller does not have any recourse, resources, if the seller doesn't have any money to go after, you're stuck. The good thing about it is the city will work with you. They'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4 years. If you work with someone like me, and I wear the glasses and I walk around like that, you know, I'm joking with David here, but I'm meeting with these inspectors all day and code officers. So I work with them. I used to be one of them. I emulate kind of the way that they look and talk. I feel like Eminem, walk, talk, and act like me. But anyway, it's another story. But the bottom line is, I communicate with them, this resident's in a hardship, they bought the property, they could go in the property appraiser, they'll give you time. But the second they see you not making progress, they'll send you to the court, the magistrate. So this guy, he probably has to come up with $10,000 or $15,000. And it's not worth it. And the LLC that the investor has, he bought a property. And every single property in an LLC, he's covering his liability in his tracks. Now there's one thing that we didn't mention. Can anyone guess it? A seller's disclosure.
Exactly.
Now, in this particular instance, he did have a seller's disclosure, and instead of writing "don't know," he wrote that he pulled permits for everything. So that leaves some liability. At least as a realtor and an agent, we know that we did our job. That's why they say always use seller's disclosures. And it says on the top of the seller's disclosure, let the seller fill it out. don't fill it out yourself.
But sometimes they lie.
But at least that document is there.
I don't trust them.
Now, if you were the listing agent and you didn't even come up with the idea that there should be a seller's disclosure, which most brokerages require, or the buyer's agent didn't ask for one, you're broke.
Sometimes they say at the seller's disclosure, I don't live in the property.
Correct, and he could write don't know, but again, and why I'm so passionate about this and it ticks me off is because I see this every day. So again, the seller's disclosure, don't know, lied about it, it protects the agency and the brokerage. When agents are running around and they're not looking for it, they could have had the seller's disclosure there. It doesn't solve all the problems. The lien search doesn't solve all the problems, but it's something there to say, hey, we asked the seller about this. We checked about this.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you don't have a seller's disclosure and your brother goes to his attorney and says, hey, was there a seller's disclosure? You look kind of stupid. You look like you don't know what you're doing.
Another thing, guys, especially realtors. We have a lot of realtors that work with Reliable that actually order searches once they get the listing, okay? The reason they do that is to find all those unrecorded issues that might pop up later. Your title company is gonna order a lien search. However, it's sometimes good to do some of the legwork yourself. And the nice thing about it is we only charge $50 for you to start the process. We'll send you a general idea of what's going on with the property. That amount will be credited once your title company, if they do use us, they will actually be credited that amount towards the full lien search.
Yes,
So it's really well.
that is called a pencil search, okay?
Yeah.
So if you want to submit an offer, and you want to make sure what the property has, it's only $50 up front. But if we do the closing and we use Reliable, that we give it to you as credit, okay?
And so later in the presentation, we'll go over what a lien search is. We'll also go over the costs and the turnaround times and why those things vary. Because but we're on track. Hold on. We'll watch the video after. I like what we're doing here. Code violations. Overgrown lots, inoperable vehicles, your dog doesn't have a rabies shot, your tenant doesn't have a rabies shot in Miami-Dade County, you have pit bull on the property. These are things that the lien search also pulls up. So here, I'll show you a picture. I'll fast forward a slide. So I'm fast forwarding, I'm jumping around because we're going at the paces that we are. This is what the front page of a lien search looks like. And I'm really excited to show it to you because not all the lien searches are alike or look the same. You guys are only concerned about the first page. The lien search company does all the work. There's usually 40 on a residential, 100 pages, 400 pages on a commercial. You're gonna see in a lien search, and you guys could look in your emails, because I'm sure you have them, they request information from the water department. If it's Weston, it's City of Sunrise. They request information from Broward County, and I'm like, what does Broward County have to do with Weston? Although it's in the county that it's in, but before Weston became a city, in 1996, Broward County was the building department. And for a house, if the house was built in Country Isles, let's say, in 1991 or 1987, you want to check Broward County, and you want to check Weston. And when I worked for the city, I was looking at the numbers one day. I was in the height of the real estate market. I was processing open permit searches, 50 of them a day before my day started, kind of, and I got to the building department. The city charges the lien search company $180 for what I was processing for the city. I'm like, wow. I'm only making $2,000 a month. I'm processing thousands of dollars a day. But again, that was 10 years ago. And the point I'm making to you is the city has their own information within them, and they charge for that information. And there's a turnaround time. So later David's going to talk to you about why these turnaround times differ from city to city and why one lien search costs $225 and the other costs $350. So this is what the main lien search looks like. I just talked to you about open permits, building violations. We touched into code enforcement. That's work without a permit. That's property maintenance. I had a house in Emerald Estates by Weston Commons. They took down a palm tree. They had violations from the HOA. They had violations from the city of Weston, because the city of Weston has a landscaping code. So I had to coordinate between the HOA and Wesley, the landscape inspector with the city of Weston, and David. So some of these things overlap. So in Weston, you can't just take down a palm tree if it's dead. You have to put back two baby, you have to,
Replace.
in Weston, and you need to replace it with a certain species and a certain height. You can't put a cheap baby palm there. No, we're in Weston, baby. You got to put an 8-foot spruce or whatever. I'm not a landscape person. I know podocarpus and the hedges around the AC, but the point is there's a schedule. And the city has, and you live in the city, you follow the schedule. You follow the schedule even if you're not in an HOA, if you're in Bonaventure. You're still in the city of Weston. So that's code enforcement. This is the property taxes. So this is going to show if there's any taxes owed and the last time the taxes were paid. And then this is utilities. So this is why you're going to see Sunrise, Broward, you're like, I'm not in Sunrise. I'm not in Broward County. This is an unincorporated Broward. So the lien search deals with all these things and making sure all these things are covered. If the lien search ever misses anything, or the title company ever misses anything, that's a problem. Because then years down the line, and that's why the lien search company, a good one like Reliable, they don't make mistakes. Stewart Title, they don't make mistakes. And we need to make sure the property's conveyed correctly so you maintain the relationship with your clients.
Wait, we don't make mistakes if you tell us ahead of time. Okay?
You mean you don't have a crystal ball?
We don't have a crystal ball. You guys have to tell us.
Can we use the title insurance to fix all these problems?
You can close, so that's a good question. You can close with open permits and code violations. They're not title defects. A lien on the property with per day fines and then it became a lien, that's a title defect. But an open permit is not. And that's a good question. What was your name? Rosie? That's a good question because I get asked and I try and give good advice to the agents. If I feel I can't close out a permit or it's going to become a problem with the city when calling the city inspector in, I was in Miramar the other day in Silver Lakes. And I'm like, this screen enclosure is messed up. It's from 1996. Here's a picture of another one, but this isn't even the one I'm talking about. So I'm called about a screen enclosure like this. It was built by GL Homes in 96. It went through 3 owners. City of Miramar has an open building permit for the screen enclosure. This is another one of them. I get to the house, open permit. Seller's like, okay, what do I do about this? Buyer's like, how do I close this out? What do we have to do? This screen enclosure, not this one, but the one out there, was in such disrepair that if I called the city out and renewed the permit under my license, they're going to give a code violation there, or they're not going to be able to close it out. So I'm like, look, I'm at the property. I charge $360 for an inspection to evaluate. And I'm like, look, credit the buyer $5,000. We're done. Don't spend money with me to try and make it right. The city's going to have problems with it anyway. So I try and give the best advice all the time. Because some of these problems, they're not, meaning this 1996 Miramar permit for screen enclosure, I can't close it out. The only way they're going to close it out is if I demolish the structure or if I build a new screen enclosure.